Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. BBC's Stephen Sackur has interviewed former Chief Justice of India, Chandrachud. The interview was for about 23 minutes and was full of hounding questions with the BBC journalists attempting to play jury and attempting to paint Indian judiciary as not being independent. The questions ranged from Hindu elite bias in judiciary to Ram Mandir and Article 370 judgments. The CJI gave pointed answers to all questions, and he was also asked if Article 370 was part of the Constitution which guaranteed the special status, the autonomy of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now that had been out of place of the very inception of the modern state of India, you agreed that the government had a right to abrogate Article 370. He clarified that Article 370, originally part of transitional provisions in the Constitution, was meant to eventually fade away and merge with the rest of the Constitution. Well, we'll talk about this and what was the intention behind this interview and what were some of the key takeaways. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, with us on the program. Sumit Peer, political commentator, with us on the show as well. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, with us on the show. And Mr. Ramakant Gaur, senior lawyer, is joining us on the program as well. Professor Nalapat, I'll begin with you, sir. Thank you for being here. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. Well, you know, there seems to be that this interview was incisive in a lot of ways, but it also was agenda driven. You know, there were some truths that were found in the questions that were asked by this particular journalist. But the fact of the matter is that most of the knowledge that was portrayed by his questions was misconstrued.
Well, Vineet, the fact is that this has generated so much of interest in India only because former Chief Justice Chandrachud was the interviewee. Otherwise, frankly, a BBC interview by Stephen Sackur, hardly anybody would notice it. And frankly, very few people do notice it. But the fact is that Sackur has a record for basically India baiting, and if I may say so, for being quite Hindu-phobic. So the questions that he asked were part of what he has been saying, the same kind of dialogue, the same kind of ideological mindset, the same kind of inbuilt bias that he has demonstrated across the decades. So that what is good, I mean, Article 370, it is part of the two-nation theory. Now, Stephen Sackur obviously believes that, Hindus and Muslims should be two nations. Does he believe in Britain that there should be a two-nation theory and that the Muslim population should be separated and given a separate nation? So what is applicable to Britain, he feels is not applicable to a country. So there's automatically a double standard. 370 was removed. It is basically removed because an anomaly. It was basically a fragment of the two-nation theory in a country that regrettably was partitioned in 1947 on the basis of an entirely false premise. Now, frankly, gave the game away by asking if India would survive. And this is exactly what, frankly, Winston Churchill and others of his ilk who were, basically defenders of the empire were saying in their time that, India would never survive as a free country. It would never survive as a democracy. We became a democracy from day one of our freedom. Universal suffrage was introduced from day one of the time that suffrage was introduced. I don't think many countries, certainly not Britain, introduced universal suffrage before. Frankly, many centuries had passed. Suffrage was basically increased in stages. Even Switzerland had a situation in which suffrage to the female population was introduced only very late. So I'd like to say that India is a model, frankly, in terms of democracy. And I think one of the most telling replies of Chief Justice Chandrachud, ex-Chief Justice, was when Sackur was talking about, does implying that Indian democracy and Indian elections are not fair. Then he asked, what about 2024? I mean, surely the BJP did not plan to get the number of seats it did. It is just 20 seats short of, frankly, losing the government. Fortunately, it got 20 seats more, it got 240, but the target set by the I would say, anti-India forces long back was 220 seats. And I've been saying this for some time. Rahul Gandhi himself said this before the election, 220, 220, it'll only be 220 this time. But fortunately, that barrier was crossed. So the reality is, Vineet, it was a loaded interview. But also, the great thing is that former Chief Justice Chandrachud, with complete skill, negotiated through all these biases and cut his way through by answering lies with truth. So I'm very happy that he's come as an outstanding example of the Indian judiciary to the whole world. And I'm certain that his successor will follow in the same path. We all admire the judiciary in India. It's a very essential component of the democratic system, and whatever the Sackers may say. So again, I'd like to say, Vineet, frankly, this interview has been taken with the seriousness it has only because of the interviewee and not because of the channel or the interviewer. Thank you.
You're quite right about that, sir, and you're spot on in that assessment. Ambassador Mukherjee, in fact, the questions pertain to dynasty in judiciary, which happens to be a very technical field. You can't become a judge, you can't get through, without going through the motions of examinations and studying the law and understanding the law and, appearing in various tests and assessments that lead you to this responsible position. What was this journalist actually thinking, that you can become a judge just because your father or your grandfather belonged to the profession? This is not like politics.
Vineet, HardTalk, which I have followed for many years now, is known for its anti-Indian, pro-colonial approach towards us. Quite similar to the approach of The Economist. You have to be a gutsy and strong person, as former Chief Justice demonstrated, to take on HardTalk. Stephen Sackur, in fact, in many ways, is easier to handle than the earlier people who used to handle when I was in MEA. Their questions were like so anti-Indian that it was sometimes difficult to even respond to such questions. In this particular case, for instance, what a fine reply ex-Chief Justice gave. He said that his late father told him never to enter as a judge as long as he was serving. And he said that he spent that time in Harvard Law School. My question would be, how many judges in UK have studied in Harvard Law School? How many judges in UK would be able to answer if we had an Indian HardTalk, and I would ask them questions like, why is United Kingdom so racist, so xenophobic, so Hindu-phobic that it denies its own diversity and does not understand that it is rapidly moving from being an all-white nation to a completely colored nation? That's the kind of questions I would ask if I was handling an Indian HardTalk for the British judiciary. In this particular case, for instance, if you look at some of the questions that were asked, they were positively insulting from a personal perspective. They asked him why he was seated before a deity, to which he said that it is not prescribed that you have to be an atheist or an agnostic to be a judge. It's a very good answer, but the question was in very poor taste. He was also asked about Article 370, and he said that it was a temporary measure, and is 70 years not long enough for a temporary measure? The journalist had no answer to give. So I actually think that by going through this must have been a difficult process for him, and coming out with flying colors, he has done India proud, because he has also demolished in the process the pet notion that Brits like Stephen Sackur have, that India was never a nation state, that India became a nation state because it was colonized, that India consists of two nations, one Hindu, one Muslim, and that therefore the British were obliged to partition us in order to bring peace to the subcontinent. That's the kind of approach that Stephen Sackur has, and that's the kind of approach that the former Chief Justice demolished. So I would say I agree with Professor Nalapat as always. He came out of it with flying colors. Vineet.
Right. So with Peer, Hard Talk is a show which, obviously I have also watched on a number of occasions, but the fact of the matter is that they seem to be living in La La Land, aren't they? In fact, if these questions are posed to the former Chief Justice, who is an astute, individual, he's been a judge par excellence. He weighs everything, every decision of his, perhaps, may be susceptible to some sort of a scrutiny. But the fact of the matter is that law has been upheld, and law has been upheld on the basis of the Constitution. I'm sure something like this cannot be said for some of the Western countries that are never targeted in a show like this.
Vinny, thank you very much for having me on your show and conducting this wonderful discussion today. Well, the answer is that first of all, you have to look at the bigger thing, what is happening around us. Before, coming to this particular question, I strongly believe BBC is a tool of deep state. This man is a racist. I start with that. That is a pretext. Well, underline. Look, there is something about Mike Pence did a revelation that there was something called as Atlantic Council, which was using US aid funds and which was using money to distort India, to, kind of censor all the big tech companies, to censor pro-Modi content, pro-BJP content, pro-Hindu content. That is what the former officer or the representative or a elite of the US Homeland Department says now. After that, I want to take you to the biggest revelation which has come yesterday, that is about this internet networks. Internet Networks is an NGO which had 4,000 outlets in the world. They trained thousands of so-called journalists to be fact checkers, alleged fact checkers. And they were the people who were used to distort information, and 86 of them exist in India, and they did all their best to distort all the achievements of India, all the achievements of Modi government, and all the achievements of what India has done. And they also ran a narrative which was anti-Hindu, anti-India in the campuses, in the universities. They did everything to make sure Prime Minister Modi does not come to office in this time around. And they were successful to some extent as well. So FCPA gave them the power, USAID gave them the money, State Department gave them the directions. With all those, it's a 360-degree effort which was happening around the world. Then another Pyada, another pawn of the deep state comes and he wants to talk to Mr. Chandrachud, sir. What does he want to talk? He comes with three things in his mind. Look, you are a Hindu, you are son of a judge, so you are privileged. Because of your caste, you are elite. And because you are elite, you got a lot of pressure on the government. And because you are a Hindu, you wanted to favor a Hindu government. So I am going to bring out 8, 10 of your legislations, and then I am going to prove how either you say you are a Hindu, you favor the government, or you come and say I was a Hindu and I was a judge. I was pushed and cajoled by Modi government to give into this statement because judiciary in India is not free. We come to the pressure. That is why we give these statements, and that is how the India as a judicial system is compromised. Modi ji is a racist or a whatever you want to call him, because as per this, this Atlantic Council, they describe him as a nationalist authoritarian. So I want to enforce this image, and how India is a broken house. Look, I went up to 1990. They were writing books in UK how India will fail, and when it will fail, and iska wo कहते हैं ना वो श्राद्ध कब होगा. They were writing these books around that. In only 1990 they stopped writing these books. When India is growing and elevating to a better stature, when Prime Minister Modi is getting a better reception and a better, man samman at a global stage, when India has become the #1 country for United States of America to talk to, and unfortunately UK has become a chappu. Hindi mein kehte chappu. Chappu is, in English we call it a lackey. Has become a lackey, then these people are unleashed. These people are unleashed with political motives and agendas somehow to bring down that image and aura. If you have this Atlantic Council, if there were internet networks, now you have this hard talk, which exactly went. He came with all the loaded questions, and the best reply I like what the Chandrachud sir gave him is that, look, the Supreme Court of India or the judiciary of India is not a opposition of India. That means I don't have to oppose the government for anything. I am not in the business of opposition of the government. I will look into the credentials of the thing and then will respond to you. And even if you watch
in fact,
the video,
Sumit, there was a serious charge made that there was pressure from the Modi government on the judiciary, which is preposterous.
Vineet ji, exactly this is the point I was trying to make. You got it, sir. You hit the nail on that. This is exactly what he wanted to make. Either admit I am a Hindu, I am an elite, and I help the government, or Worst case, I admit because of the pressure from the government, I gave this decision. So in a way, and then you could come and say, look, the former Chief Justice of India admitted because of the Modi government and the pressure from the Modi regime, he had to give these decisions, which he was not convinced. Or I can at least make a case because he's a Hindu and he is from an elite family and he comes from a rich family. So he is in hands and gloves with the government. He made these decisions. But what Chandrachud sir did, he dismantled his argument line by line, bit by bit, comma by comma, and full stop by full stop. At the end, he had nothing to talk. And in the end, he came to the beautiful question, is India sustainable as a democracy? He got an answer. I want to ask 3 questions. First of all, these people come here and interview us. I want to just answer 3 questions. Now, why do all Alibabas of the world, all Charlie Shores of the world end up in London? Why is London so brilliant? Why not Paris? Why not America? Why not Canada? Because your law, your system protects them. Is it wrong that a Deutsche Bank said that your economy works on $1 trillion of money laundering, which happens every year? Am I wrong to say that your FCRA, the Financial Regulation Authority of UK, for last 18-90 years has not even convicted one person of financial misappropriation? There are hundreds and thousands of cases pending with that. Is it wrong that because you have an alibi in UK, because you are part of some United, European Union Human Rights Commission, if a judge assumes, presumes and believes that convict, ek number ka chor, chutta, if he goes back to his country, he can be subjected to 3rd degree. You have a right to stop his extradition. And this only happens for the rich and famous people. Is it untrue to say out of all the extradition treaties you have with the world, you have only extradited not more than 5 people in all 30-40 years? And is it wrong to say, I'm quoting Chandrachud sir, where he said that in India, I could even stop the legislation or the bill of the government. In UK, you don't have the power to even talk about that. Forget stopping about that. He told him that. And when Prime Minister Modi visited your house, they say it's a constitutional nicety. After that, I did the electoral bond judgment, which was going against the government. And if I was with the government, and how, when we restored 370, a different government came into the power, which was not a dispensation in the center. So, if you look at all this thing, you were trying to get something. You were trying to get something, make it a global issue, and use it against the Prime Minister Modi exactly at the time when he and Rajnath Singh ji are in US and they are trying to do some big time deals and big time realignment of geopolitics happening. You timed interview and wanted to put it in the World Forum at the same time. Timing, sir.
Yeah, let me also rope in Mr. Ramakant Gaur, senior lawyer, into this conversation. Sir, thank you for your patience. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, in this interview, the Prime Minister's visit to the Chief Justice's house was also brought up. And it was a direct or an indirect insinuation that this is not normal, to which the Chief Justice or the former Chief Justice replied that, these are constitutional courtesies that are observed everywhere in the world, including in India. And, he himself has ruled against the governments. He's passed judgments against this very, very same government when it came to electoral bonds and several other decisions. So it does not really make a difference if, the intention here is to associate the judiciary being, hand in glove with the government.
Thanks for having me, Vinitji. Sumitji has made a point. I'll start from there where he left. And I'll quote 14th May 2024 article of The Guardian, where their own official says 40% of world's laundered money passes through London. This is the fact. Majority of luxury properties of London are bought by these money launderers of the world who are involved into drug trafficking, corruption money, and etc. It's all crime money. People from the refugees from Pakistan and other countries are taking refuge to this country. It is for them to know and to tell the people of the world why these criminals are given heaven-like treatment in their country. I would quote, जिन्हें ज़मीन पर रहने का शऊर नहीं, उन्हीं का तकाजा है कि आसमां ले ले. So he was pointing out Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Justice Chandrachud's home at the time of Ganesh Puja. Ganesh Puja is done at the inception of all the ceremonies. It is not confined to a religion, or it is not confined to a sect. Two head of the institutions. Justice Chandrachud was heading judiciary. Prime Minister Modi is the head of the nation. And as leader of the nation, he visited Chief Justice Chandrachud's house as a courtesy. If he has failed to point this out, I think there is something not right in the point of views. He could not see the achievement of man. I really miss Justice Chandrachud and Chief Justice's court, irrespective of the fact that we love Justice Khanna on the helm of the affairs. But we miss him. A man who participated into 62 constitutional bench judgments, a man who has actually created remarkable transformation as far as the digitization of records, filing in the courts, and computerization of all the courts in the homeland. I can appear in number of high courts on one single day through digital means. It is Justice Chandrachud's contribution. So this man was confronted with the fact. Stephen Sackur forgot, before Chief Justice, he was a great lawyer, and a lawyer knows his business pretty well. Stephen Sackur touched 5 topics. A, dynasty. Chief Justice Chandrachud dealt with this beautifully. In fact, one thing he did not mention, I would love to mention that. Chief Justice Chandrachud's son, who is a designated senior advocate, did not enter Supreme Court when he was a judge of Supreme Court. It is not only Justice Chandrachud, whose father has asked him not to appear. His sons, who are lawyers and apt lawyers, did not appear in Supreme Court. Second thing he quoted about political pressures, quoted New York Times. Justice Chandrachud dealt this issue vehemently and said this is wrong. Rahul Gandhi's protection was given by Supreme Court, not once but thrice.
All right,
issue,
sir.
so
All right. So out and out, what this interview was predominantly meant to achieve was to somehow condescend and put the former Chief Justice on the spot. But it's on the contrary what has really happened in this interview. We've run out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined us. Thank you so much. We take a short break on that note. Be right back.